Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. So today we're back out at the pole barn addition project, and I'm getting ready to start to put the structure together. And this is going to be an interesting video because I'm going to show you a technique that's different than what most people will use for pole barns. Now, if you look at typical pole barn construction, 99% of the time people will put in all of their posts and get them plumb, and I'll get them all lined up and backfill them before they move on to the rest of the structure. And that method is really only required for large pole barns, generally with walls bigger than 32 or 40 feet. For smaller pole barns, it's really not the best approach. It wastes a lot of time because you think about it, you have to go to every post and get it plumb, brace it up, get it in line with all the other posts, and that's very time consuming. That's work that really doesn't contribute to the overall build of the structure. It's really just work required to stage each individual post. And so what I found over the years is that there's a better method. We're going to go into that today. But again, if you're talking about a large pole barn, bigger than 40 foot in any wall length, you kind of do have to do that. There's one really big flaw in that method though, and if you ever look at a pole barn or watch the process of construction where they set all their posts first, they'll work really hard with a level to get each post plumb vertical, and they'll generally use strings or sight down a wall to get all the posts in line with each other. But what is very difficult to do is get all the posts twisted the same, and we're typically talking about square or rectangular posts, and ideally you want the outside edge, outside face of all of those posts to be in a nice plane, because that's going to form your wall. And so in addition to having the posts lined up, you really also have to have all the posts twisted so that their outer face is flat in that plane, and that's very hard to do. And I've looked at a lot of pole barns over the years, and if you sight down the wall, you see it's got some waves in it, and it's because they didn't get their posts properly lined up in a plane. And when they nail their wall girts on and put their siding up, you end up with twists and waviness in the walls. And I don't fault the builders for that. It's very, very hard to get a whole bunch of posts lined up both in alignment and in planarity. It's just a tough thing to do. And so the method I'm going to show you today eliminates the need for that. And so it's really, in my mind, just a quicker method. There's less work staging up your posts, and it's a better method because it's going to force all your posts to be lined up in a nice plane. And in a nutshell, what we're going to do is we're going to start putting up posts, knitting them together with the wall girts and the skirt boards, and we're going to let the structure become the guide to get everything in alignment. And we will not backfill our post holes until after everything's done. All these posts will be down in their holes, resting on a footing. If we need to square up the structure, we can make diagonal measurements. We can basically take a small sledgehammer, knock a post and shift the wall. We can run a string down along the wall girts to check to make sure everything's nice and lined up. And so really what I like about this method is that you're using the structure of the pole barn, the skeleton of the pole barn, to square itself up, and you're not relying on zillions of strings, lines of sight, eyeball measurements, anything like that. This really is a nice, quick method, and it saves you a lot of hassle that you would normally devote towards getting each individual post set and perfect. So we're going to go ahead and get started here in a minute. I wanted to point out a couple things. With this method, really the hardest part is getting your first post up. And so if you have two people, it's not too bad. If you're working alone like I am, you're going to need something to help hold up the posts. Sometimes I will use the forks on the tractor, other times I will use a ladder. And then the other thing is you want to have something set up to quickly support that post when you get it up vertical. And in this case I have the luxury, I'm starting from an existing structure, and so I've already attached the skirt board and one of the wall girts to my corner post from the existing building. And I'm basically going to just stand up my first post, my corner post for this addition, get it propped up so it's not going to fall, and then I'm just going to lift that wall gird up in place, clamp it down to temporarily hold it while I use a level to get everything good. And that's going to be kind of a quick start to this process. If you're starting without an existing structure, fresh pole barn construction, I recommend you're going to again start in the corner, do the corner and a post on each side of the corner to form a tripod. That'll hold itself up and let you start the rest of the structure. So let's go ahead and get started now. Okay, so there's our first post, our corner post, and then one wall girt and one skirt. That's really just enough to get that first wall in position and upright. And we'll come back later and add more girts to this. But for now, this is our starting point. This is what has gotten us going. And I wanted to mention, you saw in the previous clip, I did use a level to make sure the post was plumb and make sure the girt and skirt boards were level. But I had also put marks on each of those boards where I know they needed to go. And it's just confirmation when you get everything together. You can come back and look. And I knew where these boards needed to start on these posts. And once you swing them in place, get those boards level and the post plumb vertical, everything is where it needs to be. And so again, we're using the structure. We know the dimensions of the structure, and this is our first step towards using the structure to basically set itself up and not rely on external references. So we're going to go ahead now and move on to the next post on the eave wall. All right, so the second post is up. The corner is now established. I've got both of those posts plumb, mutually plumb, and all the girt boards and skirt boards are level. And so really this is the hardest part, I think, is establishing your first corner. From here, it's just a matter of marching along. What I'm going to do next is start off from the second corner, basically, and then I'll have everything meet up in the middle. And there's a bunch of ways you could do this, but I like establishing the corners first, and so I'll begin doing that next.
All right, so here's our completed basic structure. I've got all the posts up. I've got just enough girt and skirt boards on to keep the posts upright, and everything's nice and level and plumb. And I don't know if it's obvious from the video, but one of the benefits of using this method is that it's very, very quick. And I'm trying to estimate the time I spent just putting this structure together, and it's really just about an hour for all of those posts and what you see up here. I mean, I spent more time walking back and forth between my barn and my workshop looking for tools and cutting the lumber. You know, that added time, but the actual throwing things together just goes really, really quick, and kind of speaks to the efficiency of this method. You know, I didn't really have to fuss with any individual posts. As I put the structure together, I kept squaring and plumbing and leveling everything that the way it was supposed to be. And you know, it's all up now, and it's up very quick. And so what I'm going to do now is complete the structure. I like to have the wall girts 2 feet on center, so I've got a couple more rows of girts to add, and I'm going to do that now. The front gable wall, that's going to have a door, so I'm going to have those 2 boards up just there temporarily to kind of keep things held together while I work on the rest of the structure. But eventually there'll be some additional posts added there, and more complete framing for the front.
Alright, so I got all the wall girts up on this eave wall, and I'm going to hold off on the additional wall girts on that back gable wall, because really, as you noticed when I was putting these up, I stagger the joints on each row. I think that's better for structural strength and certainly shear. And I want to do the same thing on the back wall, but I can't do that until I put up a middle post in the existing pole barn there. For the middle of that back wall, and then I'll bridge across that and be able to stagger the joints then. So I'm going to hold off on anything on the back wall for now. The next step, what we'll do in the next video, is we're going to come back and just check everything and square up the structure. So what I'll do is I'll run strings down along each of these girts and see how the wall is. I can already tell it's one or two of the posts is in or out a little bit, and so I'll basically kick those posts into alignment, and then we'll do some diagonal measurements across the structure, check for square, and you know, if we need to, we can kick this wall either direction. It's a pretty stiff structure now in this direction, and you know, again, each of those posts is sitting on that concrete footing down in the hole. They're not held in place by anything yet. There's no backfill in these holes, and so it's pretty easy to shift this wall back and forth as needed to square up the structure relative to the existing pole barn. So we'll do that in the next video, and once everything's squared up, then I will backfill these holes with dry mix concrete, and that'll really take care of the basic structure. So that's going to wrap things up for today. I hope this has been a useful video. Again, the key point is that you know, for small pole barns, if you really want to take advantage of this pole barn construction technique, especially if you're working alone, you don't want to set all your posts ahead of time. That's just tedious. It kills a lot of time. What you want to do is put up your posts as you knit together the structure. Use the structure to square everything up. You know, use the structure and the wall girts as you level these to plumb up the posts. And hopefully you notice that this has been a very efficient process for me working alone. It's really one of the things I love about the pole barn technique, but again, you got to be smart about it. Take advantage of this technique and use the structure to help square itself up. And to me, that makes it a really quick method. And you know, again, I threw this whole thing up, not counting saw time and looking for tools and lunch breaks and stuff. I really threw the basic structure up in about an hour, and then another, you know, 10-15 minutes to put these additional wall girts on. So it goes very, very quickly when you use this technique. So that's going to do it for today. As always, if you have any questions or comments, leave them below, and thanks for watching.